Terry Jaymes Alive is on the all-new 97.3 KIRO FM weekend. Learn, laugh, relax.
All right, here we go. April is Autism Awareness Month, and I have somewhat of an embarrassing way that I became super aware of autism. I'd always heard of it, but I really didn't know a lot about it. Not in another life, in a current life, I have another job besides this weekend show here at 97.3 KIRO FM. And I do another radio show that's on 30 different cities and XM satellite, and it's much different than this. It's one of those guy shows where sometimes you're not so proud of yourself afterwards. But I've always wanted to do this type of radio show. This has been a dream of mine for many, 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 many years. And we decided a long time ago, over 10 years ago, at my other job, let's put on a motorcycle ride. I have a Harley, let's go do this type of stuff. I had no idea. We said, let's do one for charity. I had no idea what charity to do it for, so we approached a woman at the Harley dealership whose son was autistic and said, why don't we do it for autism? And I was like, sure, whatever. It was just like that. And then the very first ride that we did, it sold out. It was unbelievable. And the people from the Autism Society had brought out a color guard. And everything was just so real to me and so emotional and so true to me. Right then I knew, wait a minute, this is really special. And I had no idea what I was about to learn and how my life was going to be changed. It absolutely, truly changed my life. We over the last 10 years, I don't know exactly how much money we've raised. We've done the ride for many, many years. I'd say close to $1 million. And it is in meeting parents. We've done other golf tournaments and things like that where people are like, hey, thanks for the donation. They walk off. The parents and the people that are affected by autism are the most thankful people you will ever, 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 ever meet. And they continue with it. Even years after you've talked to them, they follow you wherever you go. And it is just one of the most unbelievable experiences I've ever had in my life, which makes me very, very happy right now to introduce some very special guests here today on Terry Jaymes Alive. Tracy Schneider with me, of course, the wife of John Schneider, the Seahawks general manager. You are also on the board of members for FEAT, Family for Effective Autism Treatment. You have a son who's autistic. Diagnosed at 3, he's now 10, right?
He is 10.
It is great to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Also, Dr. Gary Stobie, the Program Director of Autism Adult Transitional Services at the Seattle Children's Autism Center. Thank you for your expertise today.
Thanks for having us, Terry.
And being here on a nice sunny day. And, of course, Rob Silvola. Rob, did I say your last name right?
Yes, you did.
Beautiful. Rob is a senior at Seattle University. He is studying history, I believe.
Correct.
And you were diagnosed with Asperger's
Yes,
at
I was.
13 years old. And it's great to have you here today, too.
Good to be here, Terry.
All right, well, we're going to start off first with, if you have a child or you know somebody or whatever it is, as far as some of the things to look for, some of the symptoms to look for. Doctor, what would we need to look for?
Well, we think about autism and autism spectrum disorders. We watch for 3 certain things. We watch for a delay in the development of language and communication. We watch for a delay and atypical development in social interaction. And then we watch for unusual repetitive behaviors or very restricted interests. And this is a condition that develops early.
Mm-hmm.
We see it before the age of 3 in most. Although some milder forms we do not diagnose until later years.
Yeah, and the news research right now, according to USA Today, this came out on March 29th, now showing that 1 in 88 U.S. children have autism spectrum disorders. That number is not comfortable.
No.
It's getting worse.
A staggering number.
It's getting worse.
Yeah, there's been a 78% increase just in this decade. The numbers back when I was in residency training was 1 in 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're at 1 in 88.
Do you think the numbers are higher now because there's different ways to keep track of it, or?
Well, we know that that's a factor. We know that we're better at recognizing the signs of autism. The average age of diagnosis has gone down. We're more aware of it. The concern, though, is that it's more than that. I think these numbers continuing to lower The concern is that there are factors that we don't understand, maybe factors in the environment that may be contributing to this increase.
Yeah, that's a big debate right now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And from a parent perspective, I look at the rise in the numbers and I agree that we are being better, that we're better at diagnosing it and we're better at taking care of these kids. But I also believe that there is definitely a rise in these kids, because if there was this population, a number of kids, however many years ago, we would have a huge group of kids now that we're, teens and adults that you would recognize.
Now, Tracy, what were some of the things that you noticed with your child?
We started questioning our son when he was about 14 months. And then I started bringing it up with our primary care physician when he was at his 18-month well visit. We noticed he lined everything up. He was very specific in his routine. He wouldn't communicate with us. He did have communication skills, but they were only echolalic and repetitive. He would not answer to his name. He wouldn't point at things. He would not interact with his peers, with other kids his age. He just did not function like his peers, like a typical 18-month-old would.
Now, when you noticed this, you obviously talked to your husband and said, well, what do we do?
Exactly. And Ben wasn't diagnosed until he was 3. And my story isn't uncommon with a lot of parents either, because you have a child, and he was our first. So from 14 months to 3 years, we went through, he's fine, there has to be something wrong. He's fine, there has to be something wrong, based on his good and bad days. And it was hard to find the support. Our physician wasn't extremely knowledgeable about it, so they weren't able to lead us in the right direction. My husband was with the Green Bay Packers at the time, and I ended up taking out their psychologist to lunch because I was trying to find what could I do. The physician's office was recommending parenting classes to me. They were recommending, I do this or I try that. So finally I got some direction and went back and pretty much demanded a referral to someone who could diagnose him.
Now, early on, did you find out, like you talked about, there were some good days and bad days? Was there any amount of denial in there, or?
Probably. When you had really good days, when he had good days, you were like, okay, maybe he's fine. Because you never want something to be wrong with your child. You never want something to be a roadblock for them. But finally, we just got to the point where we were like, there has to be something going on.
So that is obviously a very tough time as a couple, even.
Oh, absolutely. One of the first things we learned what the divorce rate was of parents that have kids on the spectrum.
Oh, really?
At the time, it was 85%, and I'm not quite sure what it is now. But yeah, that was one of the first things we learned when Ben was diagnosed. And, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. We've definitely made it through the tough times, and as a couple and as a family, we're stronger now than we've ever been because of that. But it's not easy.
Well, Doctor, obviously you've had these parents come to you and say there's some sort of issue. How do you walk them through this?
Well, it's difficult because this is a behavioral diagnosis. We don't have a biological marker. We can't put up the picture of the X-ray and
there's no blood test for it or anything. Yeah,
and there's always this dilemma for a lot of kids. Just what Tracy's talking about this denial that goes on, and you really when you first face this diagnosis, it's almost like you completely erase what you envisioned as your future for your child. And now you have to replace it and create this new reality. And parents go through a lot of difficulty with that initially during the first 6 months and 12 months. And our job is really to try to allow them to start to move forward and really get them empowered with regards to information and get a team put together for treatment, because we recognize the importance of early diagnosis and early intervention.
What's the earliest we could try to get diagnosed with this?
Well, we're starting, research is starting to show signs as early as 6 and 12 months, but we really can't make a diagnosis until around 18 to 24 months. But we're urging parents to recognize these signs, the signs of decreased eye contact and decreased gesturing, a child not necessarily reaching for their parent or not liking interaction. These are the signs that we like to see, and then we like to get testing from 18 to 24 months if possible.
Now, we're going to meet Rob here in just a second, who was diagnosed with Asperger's at 13. Is that in a later stage to be diagnosed?
Yeah, and that's true. And Rob can, I'm sure, tell you about this, but he probably also can tell you that he had issues going on for years before that.
Back to when I was in elementary school.
Right.
A long time back.
Right.
Okay, well, we'll get into all of that. We'll get into any of you parents out there that the goal today is to help out, to get informed, to let you know how you can help if you're just listening to the show and all the really cool events that are coming up. We have all this stuff on the way. You're listening to the all-new 97.3 KIRO FM Weekends, driven by Cooney Westside Infinity in Linwood and CooneyInfinity.com.
Terry Jaymes Alive is on the all-new 97.3 KIRO FM Weekend. Learn, laugh, relax.
With me in the studio right now, Tracy Schneider. She is the wife of John Schneider, who is the Seahawks general manager with brand new uniforms, by the way, which I really love.
Thank you. I love them too.
Big fan of those.
Yay,
way to
you
go,
did a good
Nike.
job.
Of course. Dr. Gary Stobie with me, the program director of Autism Adult Transitional Services at Seattle Children's Autism Center.
Thanks,
Thank
Terry.
you for being here. And we've got Rob Silvola. Rob is a senior at Seattle University studying history, and he was diagnosed with Asperger's at the age of 13 years old. We're talking about autism, and right now the new research showing that 1 in 88 U.S. children have autism spectrum disorders. Now, that falls into 3 categories, doesn't it?
Right. Right now, it's the way it's categorized is as autism, Asperger's, and then this other condition called PDD-NOS, which stands for Pervasive Developmental Disorder, not otherwise specified.
Now, Rob has Asperger's, and at 13 years old, you were diagnosed with that.
Correct.
Now, how did that whole thing come about?
Well, when I was very young, I had a lot of the symptoms that he described, a lot of the behaviors. I was very repetitive, particularly like with hand motions, like I would tap my hand a lot, that sort of thing. And I also was very interested in history as a subject in school. I would read everything there was to read about it. I was just devoured information. I mean, even today with Wikipedia, I'm the same way. So, yeah. And really, I also had Tourette Syndrome as a youth, and my family was a little bit confused because there was similar overlap between that. I think that's why it took till I was about 13. And there wasn't as much known, I don't think, back then. So I think it was harder for them.
Now, obviously, you're being in school, a senior in college, and you're definitely a success story out of this. But not everybody is a success story.
Right. I think, in Rob's case, his hyper-focused interest was history, which is something that can get you through school. And, it's different if you have a kid, let's say, that's hyper-focused interest is toilet seats or something that's not going to get you very far.
Yeah.
So I think that makes a big difference. And I think his point about being diagnosed with Tourette's, we do see a lot of overlap with other psychiatric and behavioral conditions. We see overlap with ADHD. We see overlap with anxiety. So often kids that are diagnosed at a later age have been labeled as other things for many years.
Now, what has been your toughest challenge so far?
I would say integrating into the real world, just making that transition. After I left high school, my first couple years of college were not the most fun years, I would say. They were not the most enjoyable. I was thrown into this world, and I had to make the best of it. And I appreciated it because it challenged me. It challenged me a lot. And I've been trying to figure out what parts of my life are associated with this and what parts aren't, because I don't really want to associate various points of my life with it that really aren't.
Okay.
And socialization, I would say, has been somewhat difficult, but I've gotten eons better at it than I was 3 years ago. I mean, it's eons better.
Now, who did you go to originally for help?
I went to a child psychiatrist, I believe, and they referred me to a psychologist, and I went there for many years growing up. And they did a lot of, in the therapy, they did a lot where they would say, okay, imagine this situation if you have, say, a phobia, which is also associated with autism, and how are you going to work your way out of it? Somewhat exposure therapy, as I think what they call it, and I did very well with that, and I think that helped me when I got to college.
Now, are you comfortable with the way things are? I mean, obviously you're going to be graduating. What are you going to do after college?
Well, the doctor mentioned anxiety. I do have, that was a significant part of overlap as well. After college, I'd like to be a teacher, either in community college or high school in this subject. I have a great passion for it. Potentially in university, I'd have to get a PhD for that first, though. Master's right now.
Good for you, man.
Thank you.
That's great. Now, as far as Asperger's go, what type of percentage is he falling into as far as, the success rate?
Well, I think what we're seeing is we see three trajectories, basically. We see a trajectory that is a very good outcome, like Rob, where they can go on and go to college and get married and have a job, and that's about 1 in 5. It's actually a higher number than people might realize. On the other side, however, we see another group that remains severely impacted, and that's also about 1 in 5. And those individuals will really require lifelong support. And the largest group is a group that does make progress, but continues to show signs of autism through their life.
Well, I mean, I'm obviously very happy for you that things are working out the way they are, and and obviously you're dealing with everything. You've got a great positive attitude. I love you. As soon as I met you, I just fell in love with you.
Well, thank you.
No, you've got it going on. Now, as far as a parent, how did your parents react when it first happened? Because I don't know if
Well, my parents were actually. They were very understanding about it, in my opinion. They wanted to get the best treatment that they could for me. They sacrificed a lot, I think, to be able to afford it. I mean, it's incredibly expensive. And we just pulled together, I think, as a family. I mean, that was really their first priority, was with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, so as far as your family goes, Tracy, obviously this is a different spectrum for autism. I know your son was diagnosed, and now he's 10 years old. Have you been seeing a lot of improvement, or?
We have. We've seen a ton of improvement. When he was diagnosed at 3, he's a completely different child at 10. He's still got a lot to overcome and a lot of work ahead of him. But he's definitely made improvements. And like Rob said, I mean, it takes a lot of work. The work that our son has done over the course of his life to get where he is today is incredible. I mean, it humbles my husband and I immensely.
Now, when you meet a guy like Rob, how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel encouraged.
It
makes me feel
you were drawn to him.
I just want to talk to him.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I look at that and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's hope, and Ben can do this, and I mean, all of those things. He's 10 now, so wondering what life is going to be for him in the future. What is he going to be able to accomplish and do? Looking at Rob, I'm like, gosh, I hope Ben's able to do that. Now,
medically speaking, what kind of breakthroughs have we had? I want to find out more. I mean, we got to take a break here in just a few seconds, but I remember when I first started getting involved with the Autism Society and anything I could do and learning more about it, somebody approached me. I mean, I'm on their email list. I get everything I can about it. And they said that there's certain types of people have actually been getting cured and being taken off of being diagnosed with autism.
Well, there's a really important study that's still ongoing right now, looking at this group that we call bloomers, which are individuals that are severely impacted at the time of diagnosis at age 3, but make a really remarkable trajectory into the high functioning, even by age 9 or 10. We think there are probably multiple factors responsible for that. We definitely think that a lot of it is related to the amount of intervention that goes in and the treatment. And so we just keep hammering this home that we need more funding to allow for treatments for all individuals. Right now, most of the intensive therapies that are provided for these kids are not covered by insurance. They're not covered by the state. There's a whole group of kids that we believe would make progress that don't have access to these services. Okay. This is a huge issue in our society right now, especially in the state of Washington.
Well, we're going to let everybody know how they can help here during the next segment. We've got some really cool events planned. And not only that, I'd like to get into the more of the human side, the parenting and the relationship with your husband and how tough it is. Because I know there's a lot of people out there that could really use your advice and help and support right now. So we're going to get more into that. You're listening to the all-new 97.3 KIRO FM Weekends, driven by Cooney Westside Infinity in Linwood and CooneyInfinity.com.
Terry Jaymes Alive is on the all-new 97.3 KIRO FM Weekend. Learn, laugh, relax.
April is Autism Awareness Month. I'm learning a lot about it, and I've been aware of it and involved in it is on a little bit of a certain level for over 10 years, and I'm even becoming more informed right now, and honestly a little more upset about it because it's very, very frustrating. With me in the studio right now, Tracy Schneider. She is the wife of John Schneider, of course, of the general manager of the Seattle Seahawks. You are a board member of FEAT.
I am.
And what is FEAT all about, real quick?
FEAT is a great organization. We learned about it when we moved to the Washington area a couple years ago because our son was on the spectrum. We were, passionate and focused about looking for services and organizations that could help our family and our son. And an organization that we wanted to get involved with. And the thing I loved about FEAT is that it's a parent-level organization. They really support the parents in this process. And as a parent with a child that has autism, that's our passion, that's our focus and our commitment. So it's been a great fit.
You can find them online, by the way, at featwa.org. That's where you could go ahead and do that. Also with me is Dr. Gary Stobie, the Program Director of Autism Adult Transitional Services at the Seattle Children's Autism Center, and Rob Silvola, a senior at Seattle University.
That's correct.
Of course. Now, with me, as far as the thing, Doctor, we were talking during the break, and I said, as a doctor, this has to be very frustrating for you.
It is. I mean, other conditions, you think about you have access to treatments. If somebody comes in and has a sinus infection, you write a prescription and the family goes to the pharmacy. For this condition, we make a diagnosis and we know what will help so many kids, yet they can't access the services for a variety of different reasons. It used to be there wasn't enough providers. Now we have more providers, but we still don't have funding. Most insurance companies do not cover the core therapy that we recommend for families, and that is a real difficult time.
Now, Tracy, you were talking about that during the break. Is where you came from, they seem to have it a little more together than Washington does.
And that's the thing. We moved from Wisconsin, and Wisconsin has a state program in place. They did when our son was diagnosed. We were very fortunate to be in the state of Wisconsin when he got the diagnosis because Ben had incredible therapies, 35 hours a week for 3.5 years with speech, OT, everything. And then and when we left Wisconsin, they had recently passed an insurance mandate that mandated health insurance companies to pay for autism services for these kids so they could get better. And moving here, I kind of assumed that Washington would have these things in place, thinking it was a progressive state and thinking, okay, well, they have to be having these things in place. And then I got here and there was nothing in place. So that was hard. It was hard to hear that.
Why do you think that is?
That's a really good question because, there are at least 30 states in the United States of America that have this in place, and Washington is not one of those 30 states.
Do you think it's because it's hard to define what services are?
Well, it's a difficult thing to really look at. I mean, we as a state of Washington, I think just like you said, Tracy, we kind of think of ourselves as very progressive. Great donor organizations. Yet when we look at our state funding for special education, we're in the lowest fifth percentile of states. When you look at ability for insurances to cover this, there's only a few self-insured companies like Microsoft that cover these services. What we've seen is a difficulty on our side as providers in proving the therapies, that the therapies really truly make a difference over time. It's been a hard thing to study and to research. It's harder than a medication where you can really control and you can have a placebo control. So it is challenging from that standpoint, but we know of so many examples of treatments that are covered where there's much less evidence than what we have. So this is a problem.
And it's embarrassing.
Well, and it's frustrating. I mean, as a parent, you're looking at your child, and why isn't my child's, issues covered? If he, we looked at it, we went through the grievance process with our insurance companies before the mandate got passed in Wisconsin. And I mean, everything was denied because he had the diagnosis of autism. So it's frustrating when you get told that as a parent that I'm sorry, but health insurance is not going to cover you. But they would have covered you. They would have covered your son for all of those speech therapies if he wouldn't have had the autism diagnosis.
As a parent, that's like you don't have enough to deal with.
Exactly.
It's great. And, come on. Yeah. Now, as a parent, and God forbid, even single parents out there, this has got to be one of the toughest things to handle.
It is frustrating, because there are, and like Dr. Stobie said, there has been these research studies and things like that, and we know that all of this stuff helps. The CDC is huge on act early, because the faster we support these kids, the faster we give these kids therapies and services, the better that they're going to be. And these parents can't get their kids these services. They're expensive. They're not covered by health insurance. There isn't a state program to support them. So what are they supposed to do?
Now, if somebody's listening right now who, first of all, is maybe in question if there might be an issue with their son or daughter, where do they go? Where do they go right away?
Well, one of the places that they can go is certainly go to their pediatrician. Their pediatricians have gotten better at recognizing the signs.
I was going to say, but some of them don't.
Absolutely. So one of
Trust
the
your gut.
Trust your gut. That's a great point,
gut.
Tracy. I think that one of the things that I learned early in my practice is that parents' instincts are probably the most accurate thing that I can rely upon. I don't have lab tests to rely on. I rely on the parent's report of how well their child is doing. And the same thing, if you may not know what's going on or why it's occurring, but something's wrong. And I think if you run into a closed door with your pediatrician, we do have what are called birth to 3 centers in the state of Washington, where you can get an evaluation of a child under the age of 3. If they're over the age of 3, your schools can do an evaluation, and people are getting much better at then referring them on to specialists like myself that then can ultimately make a diagnosis.
When I have parents approach me and they're kind of like, okay, well, this is going on and that's going on, what do you think? And I'm like, well, I'm not prepared. I'm not qualified to make a diagnosis. But the thing that I always tell parents is, like, if you have any question whatsoever, go to your primary care physician and, request, demand, whatever you need to do, a referral to someone who is able to do the diagnosis. Because I think that is, if there's any question in place, that's how I feel. When I finally got to a person that could make that diagnosis, that's what changed our life.
Now, I love your trust your gut. And there has to be a certain part as a parent that, and by the way, I also love the fact that you believe in the trust your gut as a doctor. That's pretty awesome right there.
It is.
I can use fancy words. I can call it clinical global impression parent rating.
Nice try. That's cool. All right, that's okay.
That sounds very cool.
Wow, that's very official. Feel like I was on the birth of something. Now, the trust your gut, but there's also a part of being a parent, like we talked about earlier, that is a little bit of denial.
Oh, absolutely. And I wouldn't even say denial necessarily, but you just don't know. We didn't know. When I went in, and finally when we got in and we got to the doctor and we got the referral, and they wouldn't see Ben until he was 3 at that point. So we had to wait until he turned 3 years old. And then we finally went in, and it was like, when they told us the diagnosis, we were crushed, because it was like we were still holding out hope that there wasn't anything wrong. And we didn't know. I looked up, the primary care physician had thrown out Asperger's. And then I went and searched online and tried to get all this information. And then I learned in order to have Asperger's, you can't have a speech delay. And I knew that our son had a speech delay. So I was like, okay, well, he can't, that's not it. So I kind of wiped that from my mind, because you don't want something to happen. So I wouldn't necessarily say it was denial, but it's just not knowing.
And a couple things that are confusing also is that in autism spectrum disorders, it's not across the board where you see deficit. You see these skills that exist in the presence of areas that are deficient. So like Rob was a genius with regards to history. So So here he is. Oh well, he can't have that because look how smart he is. And so we have this percentage of kids where their cognitive abilities are normal, yet they have these social and communication deficits.
Yeah, from the outside looking in, like I am, everybody that I've met, everybody is unique.
Right.
Every single
That's right.
person is, and that's what makes this thing so hard to nail down, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, as a parent, and besides the, first of all, the finding out about your child's diagnosed with autism, then the money hits you and everything else and all the insurance companies. As far as things go personally with you, what was the toughest thing you had to deal with besides that? Maybe you and your husband were, obviously you talked about there were high divorce rates. And what's one of the toughest things you had to deal with?
The toughest thing that we had to deal with our son basically was his temper tantrums. He would have 2-hour temper tantrums. And
Rob's nodding his head, yes. Is that something you dealt with as well?
Absolutely, at a younger age. Yes, I can understand your
position.
we
we didn't go anywhere. I couldn't take him to the bookstore. We couldn't go out to eat. We didn't do things. We just stayed. We called it our bubble. We stayed inside of our bubble because if something broke apart, you never knew when he was going to have a tantrum. You never knew why. He just would do it, and there was nothing you could do to stop it. It would be for 2 hours, and that's hard.
Yeah.
That is hard as a parent when you can't do anything about it. And I had another infant. We have another son that's younger than our son that has autism, and it's hard. It's hard to function in your life when that's what's going on.
And it's amazing how quick you become an expert as a parent.
Isn't
it though?
Yeah. I
On
mean, that's how
anything.
you survive. That's how we survived. We just dove in and learned as much as we could learn and found as many things as we could to help our son.
Well, all of this is so frustrating because it is hard to nail down. Then once you do try to nail it down, there's so many different roadblocks ahead of you, not only in your relationships, but with doctors and insurance companies. It's just not a good situation to me, and it upsets me. So we do need to raise some money. We do need to make it aware. We do need to help people that can't get the financial needs, that don't have the financial needs. And I know you are doing something very special at FEAT. What do we have going on?
My husband and I, along with the Seahawks and the Seahawk Women's Association, are doing a celebrity waiter event. And that is going to, the profits raised from that are going to go to something that we're calling Ben's Fund.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben's Fund is being established under Families for Effective Autism Treatment with FEAT. And we're so thrilled that they are on board with us and helping us get this fund in place. And it's for families in the state of Washington that have kids on the spectrum and that need the financial support to help their kids because it's not out there right now.
When is the event? Where is the event?
The event is on Thursday, April 19th, and it is at El Gaucho in Bellevue at 5:30. And
It's almost sold out, isn't it?
It is almost sold out.
That's good and bad.
Yeah. It is, but it's going to be super fun. We have over 30 celebrity waiters, current players, alumni, coaches. It's going to be a very, very fun night.
That is awesome.
Just going to have to do more of them, Tracy.
I know.
Absolutely.
Well, we are planning on doing it every year, so hopefully, it'll keep going.
And the way you titled it just made me feel good, and it just kind of put everything into perspective. Prime time, a spirited celebrity waiter event, and you know it will be. Like I said earlier, the people that I have met that have children that are autistic and are dealing with it, the doctors, the people that are raising money are so passionate about it. And I'm not joking. I've never met anybody like them. And I want to thank you for coming in. I will do anything I can, and I hope everybody listening will do what they can. Thank you so much, Tracy. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
And, of course, Rob, good luck in your graduating college. I cannot wait to hear what you have coming up in the future.
Thanks a lot, Terry.
It's great to have you here. And, Doctor, thank you very much, Doctor.
Thanks, Terry.
Really appreciate it. Coming up, we have got some soccer for you. We've got the Sounders at DC United. Everybody have a great day. You're listening to the all-new 97.3 KIRO FM Weekends, driven by Cooney Westside Infinity in Linwood and CooneyInfinity.com.